Today's story continuing with Zusha Posner or Posner. Two stories. One he says as follows. This was Simchas Torah in the Yuds as a child. So it was after Kofis. This is in the Shins, in the 40s. And he says, I'm a little kid. How old is he? He was 12 and a half. I'm sorry, no, he was younger. Look at the one, it was 2:30 in the morning. And I was going a little crazy as kids were doing. And Shalom Be'aychon is reprimanding me, this kid is playing up there, calm down. Punkt, the Rebbe is walking by. This is before the Nesias, before he was Rebbe. And he sees that the older Bacher is reprimanding this little kid who's playing up. And the Rebbe's response, as a Yid is feilach, was hart asir? If a Jew is joyous, why does it bother you? So leave the child alone. It's okay. Story. Second story is a sad story, a little bit. His wife passed away 2.5 years ago. Abdusha just passed away recently. His wife she was, as you see from the name, she was a Yemenite woman. I don't know the details, but that was involved very much in the Shidduch. And I'm just reading here that when she died, he took it very greatly to heart. He held her in very high esteem, and he said that she's certainly by the Rebbe. And related the following, that once in Yechidus, when they were there together, the Rebbe said to him about her, and she was standing there, that she's an Isha Ksheira, Sha'isar Etzain Baila. Literally a proper fine woman who does the will of a husband, and there's two meanings to that, but as you heard in the previous stories, was not home a lot and lived a life of great devotion to the community and to others. And she totally supported that and so on. At the end of her life, she suffered greatly. Terrible. And Abzushim, when he would speak about it, he would tell the following story. There's a story that Abzushim is saying. There was a chassid called Abshalom Hillels, which means Abshalom belonging to Hillel. Who is Hillel? So this chassid was Abshalom Humaner, probably the Humaner family, descendants of him. And he was very close to the Rabbi Paritcher, who was half a Rebbe himself. Chassid of Yaltreva, Tzemach Tzedek, Mitleba Tzemach Tzedek. That's why he was called Abshalom Hillel, because he was a very close Talmud of Rabbi Hillel Paritcher. So once this Abshalom brought Rabbi Hillel Shalach Monas, Purim. And Rabbi Hillel responded to him, Was willst du, was willst du? So, what do you want? What do you want? He wants to pay him back. You want to be, it means with me, my place in Gan Eden after 100 years. It's an expression from the Gemara. Yeah, and he promised him, Hillel Paritcher promised his Shalom Human that he, after 120 years, his place would be with him in Gan Eden. End of his life, this Abshalom suffered from open wounds, and he was bedbound, and the wounds were so terrible that they had to put the legs of the bed in pails of water that the ants shouldn't climb up and into the wounds. So they asked, Zusha continues telling the story. So they asked him once, why such terrible suffering. Why does it come to you, such a thing? So he said to them, he says, what do you think? Comes easily. So Rabbi Shalom Posner would conclude it, tell the story, he was crying, and he says, and that's the same is true with her. He was saying that he's true that she suffered, he has no doubt that she is together with the Rebbe directly. And one more little story that's interesting, the Rebbe's involvement here. He says, in 1980, my wife didn't feel well. So I called with my skiris, I called up to and asked for bracha. Chassidic answered the phone, and he asked her name. So he said, Yehudis Nazira, Bat Zekiah. Zamet Chaf Yud Hey, and he pronounces it Zekiah. All of a sudden, here on the line, Vos, what? It's the Rebbe's voice. I repeated it again, Yehudis Nazira Bas Zekiah. That was in the month of Shvat of that year. And his son-in-law, this is Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Naparstik, which one that is, was in 770. So by the Mishnah Beirach, that's the same time he had called, at that time, by the Mishnah Beirach, after Kriyas HaTorah, so his son-in-law approaches Reb David Raskin and says his mother-in-law, Reb Zusha's wife's name, but he couldn't remember the mother. He remembered the first name, Yehudis Nazira, couldn't remember the mother. And the Rebbe is standing right there because he's Aliyah. And the Rebbe then said, Zakia. That's the story here. He, all the years, pronounced the name Zakiya, and the Rebbe pronounced it Zachya. Different meaning too, slightly. But at any rate, so the Rebbe, that was the explanation of the Rebbe saying what? Like that's her name is to pronounce this way, and said it at the Mishnah Beirach made for her Shvat Tavshin Mem. Okay, friends. So we'll see you, God willing. Have a good Shabbos, everybody. And we'll see everybody. Be'ezer Hashem on Monday. Here's a picture of Rabbi Zushik, and the one on the left. The one on the right, by the way, also deserves to be spoken about. The Tuvia Peles, one of the outstanding Chassidim of our generation. One of his greatest soldiers. Also passed away, a young man. Rabbi Zushik was much older, he must be in his 90s. He was in his mid-70s. And we owe the whole Dvar Malchus to him. He started it. The Rebbe actually gave it out. He was a Meidetiker soldier of the Rebbe all the years. Yeah, in fact, what's the heading is? Rebbe soldiers. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everybody. Psoras Tovos, and see you all, God willing, on Monday.